Huracan at Volantis is one of the most maligned modern steel coasters out there. This Gerstlauer Eurofighter has a strong and action-packed layout, but the consensus among most coaster enthusiasts is that this coaster is horrifically rough. Eurofighters are a mixed bag in the smoothness department. Some are glossy smooth, some have a shuffle, while others can rattle your head around. I went in expecting the worst out of Huracan, so imagine my shock when I came off this ride with a smile. I actually liked Huracan. Find out why in this review. The story of this coaster begins at the cancelled F1X Dubai amusement park. This park was slated to open in 2009, and one of their signature rides was to be a custom Gerstlauer Eurofighter. The red track for this coaster had supposedly been delivered, but the F1X amusement park was delayed and ultimately cancelled. In 2010, Volantis opened Huracan, which curiously had the same color track and exact same layout as Dubai's cancelled Eurofighter. The strong rumors that Volantis purchased this Gerstlauer coaster for a discount, and it immediately became the park's signature roller coaster. Huracan dominated Volantis' skyline as it stood 105 feet or 32 meters tall and featured 5 inversions, the most on any Eurofighter at the time. The bright red track was a bold choice for Volantis, and the coaster contrasted mightily with the park's other theming. But this coaster does have some theming of its own. The coaster is themed to the Mayans. The trains are colorful and detailed with a cool looking face in the front. And then the station looks pretty good too. It's themed to look like a Mayan temple. It's a bit boxy from the outside, but the detailing and hieroglyphics look great. One quirk I had to deal with in my visit was that multiple birds had built nests in the station's rafters, and every once in a while, they would defecate. So guests waiting in line had to watch out or get covered with bird poop. But that's not the only crud you have to deal with. People have described this ride's track work as cruddy. From day one, reports surfaced that this coaster was rough. And we're not talking about a shimmy. Most enthusiasts said this coaster was rough to the point it was near unrideable, particularly in the back rows. The belief is that this ride's track endured the harsh conditions of Dubai before coming to Germany. But there is another variable with this coaster. This was the first Gerstlauer Eurofighter to feature the company's single 6-passenger car. Gerstlauer had used this vehicle design previously on Linette and Anubis the Ride, 2 coasters the company did not consider Eurofighters. But this vehicle is probably the worst on any Eurofighter for several reasons. First, the 6-passenger vehicle was all one car and articulated as one continuous unit. All the Eurofighters that had been built previously featured 8-passenger trains comprised of 2 rows that could articulate separately, which helped them turn. Second, the vehicles feature over-the-shoulder restraints. Gerstlauer did not introduce the lap bar in their Eurofighters until the year after Huracan was built. The over-the-shoulder restraints can be a source of headbanging during jerky transitions, and for most people, they're getting headbanging on this coaster. Third, the vehicles have 33% less capacity than the standard Eurofighter train. To make matters worse, the coaster was only running 2 vehicles with less than stellar dispatches the day I visited. Usually the employees hadn't even started the restraint check process by the time the prior train returned to the station. The biggest reason for the slow dispatches was this ride's strict loose article policy. Guests had to put all their belongings in bins on the opposite side of the platform, that even included glasses secured by a strap. And new guests were not admitted until the prior trainload of guests had emptied the station and reclaimed all their belongings. I visited on a summer weekday, and Huracan had a 45 to 60 minute wait. Since I only had a half day at this park, I only had time to ride it once, so I made sure to get the front row, which by all accounts was the smoothest seat by far. The park thankfully did allow guests to wait for specific rows, which is what I did. The rows towards the back flare outwards. This gives riders towards the back more space and makes it so their view is only partially obstructed by the seats in front of them. Once dispatched, Huracan rounds a corner and ascends the vertical lift hill. Now, one weird thing with this lift hill is that when you crest the top of the hill, you nearly come to a stop. You get roughly 15 seconds to admire the view of Volantis as anticipation mounts for the first drop. And that first drop is pretty good. It's a beyond vertical drop with a 97-degree angle. Because the lift inches you over that drop, you don't quite get the same oomph as the other Eurofighters, but the drop still offers some decent ejector airtime. The pullout is quite forceful, and it's also the first instance of Huracan's rattle. So how rough is this ride really? Now keep in mind I only rode this coaster up front, and I've seen a few fan sites mention that this coaster had some track work done prior to the 2020 season, so it is possible this coaster rides more smoothly than before. For me in the front row, the ride had a dull and persistent rattle throughout. I definitely felt it, but it wasn't violent enough to cause any headbanging or give me a headache. The coaster's transitions themselves tracked well enough that they mostly didn't cause headbanging, so ultimately the ride experience was decently comfortable. I heard from others who also rode Huracan in 2021, but they rode in the back of the car and they said it was still awful. So my biggest takeaway is to ride this coaster in the front row. Back to the layout. After that drop, Huracan flies through a very snappy 0G roll. It was too fast to offer any hang time. Instead, it just had a lot of whip and some laterals, which was a fine alternative. That's followed by a rare Cobra roll for a Eurofighter. The entry into this element pulled some good positive Gs, and the first inversion was snappy. Now this transition was the only one in the ride that did cause some headbanging for me. The second part of the Cobra roll was smoother and milder in the force department. Huracan then flies over a tiny speed hill that you cannot see coming from off-ride. You take this hill with a ton of speed and get some solid floater airtime. You then rise up into the mid-course brake run, getting a quick pop of airtime on the way, and then you lose some speed on the brakes. The second half starts with this mundane drop that twists down and to the left. Huracan then borrows an element made famous by B&M, the interlocking corkscrews. Both corkscrews were taken rather slowly, so each one offered a little hang time, and the sharp turn in between the two corkscrews was fairly forceful as a contrast. Huracan then rises up into the brake run, ending the 1,840 foot or 560 meter long coaster. So what would I rate Huracan? Going off of my front row ride only, I would give Huracan a 7 out of 10. I genuinely liked this coaster in the front row. While it still had a rattle up there, it wasn't enough to cause a headache or headbanging. That allowed me to appreciate this coaster's dynamic layout. The beyond vertical drop was the highlight, but there were also 5 enjoyable inversions and a few surprise airtime moments mixed in for variety. Now I purposely avoided the back row, and if the accounts of other riders are correct, you should as well. Just go in the front row so you have a chance of enjoying this coaster like I did. So those are my thoughts on Huracan at Volantis, which ended up being a pleasant surprise for me. What are your thoughts on this infamous coaster? Did you get an enjoyable ride in this Eurofighter? Or do you think it's painful? I would love to hear what you think down in the comments. If you enjoyed this review, I'd appreciate if you gave this video a like, and you considered subscribing, because there'll be a lot more roller coaster and amusement park videos here at Canobie Coaster. Thanks for watching.